A Wahan.
Juan started the live feed.
Juan?
His name is Tony.
Tony and Rodrigo.
Used to know Rodrigo.
Alright, how's everybody doing?
Good.
Nooms is tired.
I'm tired. I took a nap.
Why are you tired?
Okay.
So this week, the podcast was on life after death according to the scriptures. Sort of. There's some other things there too. So, any comments, questions, concerns, complaints?
Gregor has a question, but he's using the restroom.
Oh, he does?
You wrote it down.
I have a question. Can we get coffee?
Can we get coffee? Probably.
Yep. I have
So-
an answer. You can.
Noom said you had a question, and you wrote it down.
Yes.
What's the question?
So it says, each in his own order, Christ, the first fruits, afterward at his coming, those who belong to Christ. Then comes the end. What does that mean?
Well, it could mean a lot of things. It could simply just as simple as Christ has to come back before everything can end.
Come on, Dad. You always have an answer.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
the end can't come until after that happens. Because we know from the timeline that Earth is still around for 1 to possibly 2,000 more years before the actual end. Would you like me to see if there's any hints in the original language in that verse? What is that? 1 Corinthians 15:24. Brought this specifically to read something. Can you use it for that?
You want your chair?
Yeah.
I'm sitting over here. What are you doing?
I'm trying to pull the chair off.
Why?
So I can sit down.
Your seat's right here.
15:24. Then cometh the end is in 24. Yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
See. So, more directly translated, that word telos, which they've translated as end in the CSB and the King James, more accurately, directly translated, would be the beginning of the end. To set out for a definite point or goal. It's the beginning of a well-defined journey. So that is the mark of, from this point on, that's the pointed journey to the end, when he hands over the kingdom to God the Father, when he abolishes all rule and all authority and power, for he must reign until he puts all enemies under his feet, and the last enemy to be abolished is death.
Yeah. Good question.
Good question. I said it last week. I'm going to say it again because I used the verse in this podcast again. Hosea 13:14. God doing his best John Cena impersonation. Death, where are your barbs? Sheol, where is your sting? Compassion is hidden from my eyes. Love it. God's a John Cena fan, apparently.
Or vice versa.
Or vice. What are you watching?
And a half.
Oh, okay. I was like, you're watching anime while we're doing the discussion. That's a first. I don't know what happened here. I've never seen you do that before.
I might need a subtle distraction to keep my mind focused when I'm listening, but not.
Because you're so tired.
But not anyway.
Well, regular
It's
basis.
like this morning, and the truck doesn't come until tomorrow for decaf. I know.
We got regular
Oh,
coffee.
you'll have to drink regular coffee.
He'll be up all night.
You'll have to put up with me being up all night. Give me, let me get a cup of regular coffee. Thank you.
All right.
Oh, it feels warm. Somebody turn the heat on.
No, I just looked at it. It's 67 degrees. I was trying to see what it was set for.
It's just the absence of directly cold air blowing on you.
You can change it.
I didn't.
Feel
No.
great.
Oh.
I just looked at
Can
it.
I? Mind if I do it?
It's 67 in here. I don't think we should turn it down
Yeah,
much
uh-uh.
more.
No. I want to turn it up. 75 or something.
Oh.
No,
that's
no thanks.
You can have the room to yourself. I'm going to go in the other.
You see, you stay over here. We're all gonna go outside.
I mean, every now and then I'll go all the way up to 71 at home, but not just pushing it.
Keep my car at 68. It's got that auto setting. Keep it on auto 68.
I don't have a fancy car like you.
Yeah.
I can change the temperature of my car.
So I like.
I'm happy that you could do that, Bill.
Yeah, me too. So I like the analogy that Paul uses in 1 Corinthians 15, starting in verse 35, where he talks about what kind of bodies will we have when we're raised.
Thank you.
And he likens death to planting a seed. The death of the human body is likened to planting a seed that enables the natural process of becoming a resurrected body. And then he goes on to talk about, but those that are going, that are going to be living when Christ comes, they're going to instantly get a glorified, a renewed body. But all these other people, they're going through a natural process after being buried that's changing them from
Their
the
natural
corruptible
state.
body they had to an incorruptible body, from a weakness to being powerful, from being a natural body to a spiritual body. I really like that. That's cool.
That's cool.
That's cool. Do-do-do. Everything gets destroyed. There's no living in heaven for eternity, like I was always taught as a kid. At least not biblically. That's just not in there. Okay, so I wanted to read part of Isaiah 65 because it talks about what life is going to be like on earth during the millennial reign of Christ.
My glasses are crooked. Is that okay?
Are you alright?
I'm fine. What's the problem? I'm
Isaiah
trying to straighten my
65.
glasses out so I can see.
During the millennial reign of Christ, there will be no crooked glasses.
That's true.
Amen.
That's not in the thing, but this is the 1,000 years after the resurrection, after the rapture, where Jesus comes back to earth with everyone that's ever been martyred to rule and reign the earth for 1,000 years.
Just the
Isaiah,
people that have been martyred?
huh?
Just the people that have been martyred?
Only the people that have been martyred are the ones that come back and reign over the earth for 1,000 years. The rest of us are. Rest of those that went in the rapture are then in heaven for that 1,000 years.
What verse are we going to?
We're starting at verse 19. I will rejoice in Jerusalem and be glad in my people. The sound of weeping and crying will no longer be heard in her. In her, a nursing infant will no longer live only a few days, or an old man not live out his days. Indeed, the one who dies at 100 years old will be mourned as a young man, and the one who misses 100 years will be considered cursed. People will build houses and live in them. They will plant vineyards and eat their fruit. They will not build and others live in them. They will not plant and others eat. For my people's lives will be like the lifetime of a tree.
Where is this?
Isaiah 65, starting in verse 19. My people's lives will be like the lifetime of a tree. My chosen ones will fully enjoy the work of their hands. They will not labor without success or bear children destined for disaster. For they will be a people blessed by the Lord along with their descendants. Even before they call, I will answer. While they are still speaking, I will hear. The wolf and the lamb will feed together, and the lion will eat straw like cattle. But the serpent's food will be dust. They will not do what is evil or destroy on my entire holy mountain, says the Lord. And that's talking about life during the millennial reign of Christ.
Cool. What was that verse again? Isaiah 65, 19 or something.
So it's pretty cool. The earth goes through
19 through the end of the chapter.
a time of pretty much hell on earth for 7 years, and then they get 1,000 years of
Every pin I get.
congratulations.
What's that?
Woo, no
Mine has
death.
been perfect.
You make it, you get to keep it.
I'm not giving it
Well,
to you.
some death.
Some death. It's just
Some
long
death,
time.
just not death out of its time.
So only the martyred would be coming down from heaven
To reign
to
for
reign
1,000
of
years.
the earth over through the Christ millennium.
Uh-huh.
And then everyone else will go up to heaven for the 1,000 years?
Everyone that goes in the rapture, I use my fingers because it's not a word used in the Bible. It's a word we use to describe an action
Yeah.
in the Bible.
It's
But, yeah.
in this section right here.
So everybody from Stephen all the way up to those who refuse to take the mark during the tribulation.
Interesting.
Stephen was the first martyr in Acts.
Was he the one that
7.
got stoned?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey,
By-
I know my story.
by
No.
Paul.
I know I don't.
I just know the name. I know how people died.
Imagine Paul. Paul was there holding people's coats while they threw stones.
Mm-hmm.
It's rough.
Yeah, going through that.
Wasn't Saul?
Yeah.
And then he was called Saul.
Back
He
then
was
he was
Saul,
called Saul,
right.
but
Yeah.
he became Paul after he
After
became
Damascus.
renewed in Christ. But Saul was the one that approved of Stephen's stoning, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was an approving witness. Yeah.
Yeah, he was like one of the decision makers.
I think
at that
so.
point, he wasn't quite that official. He was kind of low man on
Kind
the
of
totem
an
pole.
intern. He was coming
Yeah.
up in
He
the
was
That's why he was
ranks.
holding the coats.
He was holding the coat because
Yeah.
he was low man on the totem pole. But yes, he was part of the Sanhedrin, and yes, he was one of the official witness approvals of the act. All right, so this doesn't seem to rustle any of you guys' feathers.
Well,
I mean, death is a very straightforward explanation, kind of, if you don't think about it too deeply.
if you don't think about it too deeply.
Yeah, if you think about it too deeply, then you'll be in bed crying all
then
night.
it makes my mind go like this and then into a bad spot.
Explode.
So the question that I have, according to your timeline, is that everybody gets judged And then the book of life is opened up?
Yep, the books of people's acts are opened first. And we have that judgment
And they're
first.
separated.
And then the last book to be opened is the book of life, where the names are written to find out who's
So-
spending eternity with God and who's being sent away.
So if we were really bad people, but still accepted Christ, we get judged for all of that stuff. We get sent away, and then we get pulled back because our name is in the book of life.
Well, there's no sending away until
Yeah.
the Lamb's Book of Life is opened. We all sit there and watch each other's judgments until all the judgments are done. And then the last book is opened.
You're judged
What
on
is-
what you did during your earthly life.
And I think-
Isn't that where you get rewards?
Rewards for the good stuff,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really say what you get for the bad
Yeah.
stuff.
And
But
where-
from a Jewish standpoint, to judge someone, there's two sides to a coin with the Jewish view of judgment. There's, you've done something wrong, so now you need to be consoled. You need to heal from the damage you've done to yourself in that action, not just, well, in our Western standpoint, we think of, well, you're guilty, we're going to lock you up, you need to be punished. Yes, there needs to be reparation for what you've done, but there's also healing that needs to be happened, because when you did that bad thing, you hurt yourself too.
Your glasses
So
really
where-
are crooked.
I know they are. I don't know what the deal is. So where is that? Where that timeline is stated in that? Oh, they're really bad.
Which podcast did we talk about that? That might help you.
It was in this last one.
No. We actually had
Oh.
a whole. There was a bigger one. I'm trying to think of when it was, because that might help. I might be able to find it easier that way.
Because my
It was in
understanding,
Revelation.
and I
Oh, yeah.
couldn't tell you where it was, is that the Lamb's Book of Life would be opened up, and all the people that.
No, that's the last one. Even
So-
I knew that.
Oh,
So,
wow.
how are
Yeah.
the
That's
people
amazing.
that are in this book of life determined?
The book of life popped into existence at the beginning of creation. When God first spoke, the book appeared. Because that's how faith works.
So
Right?
There's just been
Would you like me to blow your mind?
a set of names in
Yeah.
this book for all of eternity?
Because once time started, theoretically, at that same moment, time ended.
Revelation 20:12.
And everything that was going to happen in between, from the perspective of faith, had already happened.
Revelation 20:12,
21
21:12.
is where part of it is talked about. Then 21:27, and then also Hebrews 12:22 and 23.
Let's just read them.
Hebrews.
And it would be like it would be like it had already happened because
Which part?
It's
The
very
Lamb's Book of Life
convoluted.
existing from
Whose
the
name
beginning?
has not been written before the foundation of the world in the book of life. Blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah,
13 what?
8 is that one.
I'm listening to you.
I'm waiting for.
Yeah, Revelations 13:8 says that the names were written from the foundation of the world in the book of life.
Yeah, so
So
and
that
it's
goes-
already happened because
Outside of time.
it's outside of time because God is outside of time. It's because he's timeless.
Yeah, he's above time.
He's above time.
Time's a creation.
Yeah, and he's above the creation because he made it.
So let's read the. Oh well.
So then that proves predestination.
No,
No?
because
Well, if we're written in the book of life before the world was created,
Well, it depends on your definition of predestination. If your predestination statement believes that things are going to happen the way they're going to happen because they've already happened in God's mind, yes. If it's from the standpoint of
they're going to happen
we-
that way because God decided they
we're
were
going to happen
No.
because God decided they were going to happen that way, and only people God decided were going to be saved were saved, no. So it kind of depends on which form of predestination. The Calvinistic view of predestination, I don't fully prescribe to, but the idea that, of course, God knew about it because He lives outside of the time stream. So
Let's try it this way. If I'm on the moon and I flip a switch that activates a laser on the Earth, okay? That laser beam, I'm not going to see it when I flip that switch. I'm not going to see it until it gets to me. It's the same concept with the book, right? Time was started, but the event, the deciding event, had already happened at that point because time was started. And my analogy doesn't work.
no, it doesn't.
Well,
It worked in my brain, and then it didn't work when it came out of my mouth.
okay.
So,
Well, what total predestination would completely eliminate man's free will. I mean, obviously, God says God gave us free will, which means we can make choices, which we do have some influence over our destiny, whether we choose to accept Christ or not.
but in the grand scheme of eternity, you've already made all of those decisions from God's perspective.
Yeah, he already knows.
And your
what
final
your free will
decision
was.
of choosing Christ or not is already recorded in that book.
Because He knitted us together in the womb of our mothers.
No, because He's standing outside of time.
Oh,
If you have the whole of creation, right?
Right.
This is the beginning of time,
yeah,
and this is when He finally destroys everything.
right,
God's up here.
right.
And he's looking
So
down, he
he
can
can
see
see
all of it
the
at the
whole-
same time.
He didn't.
Okay.
He didn't sit there and go boop 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 boop. You 5, you're coming to heaven. The rest of you, That's not quite how He did it. But He looked down and went. Sadly, there.
He
these
scrolled
ones-
ahead and he went, now let me write down the names in this book that I see are already written in the book I'm writing in there.
Only without the.
Except
actual
he couldn't
time.
do that
Yeah.
because that would be him linking himself inside time, but he's not inside of time, he's above time. Technically, he couldn't do that.
This is giving me a
It
headache.
really.
But he can and does step into time
Yeah.
to
Yes.
interact with us.
To interact with us, exactly.
So He does step in and out.
So he
of time.
does step in and out of time, so he could look at himself in time.
He could look at himself in time, but would he be looking at
He
himself?
could make all of our heads explode.
Yes, but would he
Theoretically,
be
yes.
looking at himself writing the book of life inside of time?
Well, who's to say He even wrote it? He was making an analogy.
I was making an analogy. According to the scriptures, it just
Up here.
appeared.
is.
It just did. It just started.
You're not taking all those home.
I'm turning them
Okay.
right side up.
So what were those
that the
scriptures?
ink
Let's read those
doesn't
scriptures that
flow
talks
out of-
about these books first and
Yes.
then that book. So what
Yes,
were they?
let's do that.
One.
Revelations 21?
Because
I told you.
What?
And if you needed
You rattled off a list. My wife is constantly getting mad at me. She'll write off a list and I'll be like, you said something about a refrigerator in there somewhere. I don't know what the rest of that was.
I gotta look it up again.
Refrigerator?
it was a saying.
I was gonna say now I'm confused.
We lose Dad too easily. He gets lost somewhere along the tracks.
What?
Why do they have pretty markers?
So it was Revelation something, it was Hebrews something.
Revelations 20:12 and
Like a marker.
21:12.
And 27. 2012 and 2027?
21:12.
I wanna play with your markers.
And then 2012.
Wow.
Hebrews 12:22
Good job,
23.
21, 2 through 23.
You already read Revelations 8:13.
8:13? Oh yeah. About the book of life existing.
Well, it was 13:8, but I'm dyslexic, so it has. 17:8 also talks about it.
Revelations?
Weird. Weird.
I'm
They're not upside down. When they're in like this, the ink goes away from the tip and then they don't work.
3:1.
So there you go.
There you go. That's why you get them and try and make them right, and they don't write.
Alright, looks like the
Did you
oldest
take
one
the
there
one
is
I was using?
Hebrews 12, 22 through 23.
I don't know. Where? What color was it?
That one doesn't actually say anything about which is done first.
I just looked up every reference of Lamb's Book of Life.
Looks like I wrote Zoe Kanye.
Revelations 3.
You did not call my kid Kanye.
Should eat some more.
My kid actually found it, Brian. That you went in.
Oh man, it didn't actually write.
I wasn't trying to actually write on her. That'd be rude.
That'd be
That'd be
hilarious.
bad. Then you'd have to buy a new top or.
A new top?
What?
Well, it would
She
have been
needs a
neck.
new top.
It would have been her neck.
Oh, you trying to give her a tattoo?
Have you seen Zoe's fingers?
No.
Did you color
Zoe.
their Did you color their
Show
nails?
Brian your-
fingers. I wrote fingers.
Your fingers.
Show Brian your pinkies.
No,
Fingers.
show.
Wait, what?
That's
Not
no,
her
your
pinkies.
nails. Your nails.
I asked, what are you?
Her nail. She has writing on her fingers.
Oh, no, your
Huh.
knuckles.
Punk.
Okay.
I don't see anything.
Punk rock. It's faded off. Does it say
Oh,
punk
is it?
rock?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's supposed to.
Revelations 20, starting verse 12 through 15.
20 or 21?
20.
20?
Verses 12 through
He took
15.
my pen.
Okay.
I also saw the dead, the great and the small, standing before the throne, and the books were opened. Another book was opened, which is the book of life, and the dead were judged according to their works by what was written in the books. Then the sea gave up the dead that were in it, and the death and Hades gave up the dead that were in them. Each one was judged according to their works. Death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. This is the second
No,
death,
it
the
feels
lake of
weird.
fire. And anyone whose name was not found written in the book of life was thrown into the lake of fire. So they're all judged according to their works. And then anyone not found in the Lamb's book of life.
But
is
the book was opened before the judgment.
Well, and that's
in that statement.
yeah, and that's the weird thing is there are books. There are books that are open. People are judged, and then the Lamb's Book of Life is open. So there are multiple books. They don't actually name the other books in this passage.
Yeah, it might. Could be anything.
Well, I'm sure it's
Where's the
historical.
thing with pins in it?
That? Where's my tea? I can't find my.
Not related to that at all.
I do that with my glasses.
Where's my
sometimes.
water?
I do
I do
too.
that with my glasses all the time.
Where are they? Oh, they're right hanging right here.
Where are my glasses? Oh, they're on my face.
And then I have to remind myself.
I've done that one time too.
If I can see,
Looking
I'm wearing
for.
my glasses.
Yeah.
So that's the passage. Revelations
If
20,
I could
verses
look
12
for
through
my
15 is
glasses,
where
I
it
don't
talks
need them.
about everyone gets judged according to their works, and then they're sorted according to the Lamb's Book of Life.
Brent hid my glasses.
So even if you're going to the lake of fire, you still have to face judgment for your works first before the Lord. Same judgment as everybody else.
Took them off.
It's going to be a very interesting judgment too, because they're going to be like, oh,
Just lay 'em over here.
that guy's terrible.
Be like, I know that guy. He was my account.
Put them like on.
They
I
open
retract
up-
my previous statement. I
they
didn't know
open
that
up-
guy.
They open up the other book and it's like, oh,
So cold.
that person I thought was a terrible person. They actually ended up, at the end,
It's
this guy over here,
Yeah, I know.
he did a lot of really good works. Look at all the good works he did. Look at all the things he's being rewarded for. And yet,
then boom.
And yet, then the last book, the Lamb's Book of Life, he didn't. He's not in that.
Didn't make the grade.
like, good job.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah, he's
some
gonna be a good dad.
hitman for the mob who's, killed 25 people
How to torment me.
and then gets old and starts
Just like he
thinking,
tormented his mom.
oh
Just
man,
like,
maybe this ain't the right
father
thing,
taught your
and
brother to
repents, finds Jesus,
If it genuinely has that profound, encounter with Jesus, then yeah,
I know. Spooky.
Because
right?
it doesn't. Because your works aren't
And if
the
he
salvation
came
issue.
sliding in
I know.
just as he died, he's in.
Your works mean nothing when salvation is in question. Good works, bad works means nothing.
But then you have true salvation. Is it really real?
Only the Lamb knows.
Can you
Only
give me
the-
that? Can you give me my straw? My
Uh,
straw.
For all we know,
Straw.
Hitler, Mussolini,
Huh?
Buddha, and Gandhi are all in that book.
It's your glass, right?
I would doubt it. Some of those guys. But it's
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah, well,
It'd
we
be
won't.
more difficult for Buddha since he lived 400 years before Christ.
Yeah, exactly.
But he got pretty close to the right theologies.
But he could have been one of the ones that.
Could he?
Could he?
He didn't live before the flood.
Would he be in the one who made the decision afterwards?
He couldn't make those decisions afterwards.
Oh,
He
sure.
was born during the time of the law.
Yeah. He wouldn't have been
No.
But
So how do you get your name into the Lamb's Book of Life if you were born after the flood, but before
Jesus.
Jesus?
Okay.
How do you get your name in the book?
You said it was already in there from the moment of creation.
Okay,
But what is the event that caused
but
it to happen?
but it's in there because of their life that they're going to have already lived.
Right. Well, that would be
You're
like
gonna have to wait. Go say.
like Abraham,
Well, you're exploding my brain.
right? I mean, after the flood.
After the flood, but before the birth of Christ,
Yeah.
you'd
before-
have to be like taught it from someone that, like your ancestor, they had an ancestor who taught it to them and just had to pass them through generations, wouldn't it?
Now there was no law until Noah stepped off the ark, so there was no standard of punishment spiritually.
Well, there was no
Yeah, we
law
talked about this last
until Moses.
No, the first law was given when Noah and his family stepped off the boat. No human blood shall be spilt, and anyone who spills human blood, animal or human, their life is now required. That was the first law given.
Required for what?
Required, they need to die.
To die.
Oh, okay.
If an
Even
animal
if they
kills a
kill an
human,
animal?
the animal has to die. If a human kills a human, that
Oh.
human has to die. That was the only law from Noah, from stepping off the ark all the way till the rest of the law was given to Moses. Which is why when Jesus went to Hades, he was able to preach the gospel to all those from Adam to Noah, because there was no law. And in Romans, Paul says, where there is no law, you cannot be held guilty.
Huh. So it would just be based on
Whether or not
Works.
you killed an animal.
just
Or
your
a
works.
human.
I mean, did you?
So then the bar of being able to be
That's what we talked about last week.
in the Lamb's Book of Life from the flood to Moses is that you never killed anybody. Sorry, Moses. And then from Moses to Jesus, the bar would be impossibly high.
Right.
That no one would be able to reach that mark until Jesus.
Yeah.
So they all just went to hell. Or all are going to hell. I mean, like, seriously, what is the bar then? Like, if the bar is the law, then no one makes that bar from
Right.
Moses to Christ.
Yeah.
This is why the judgment exists. Because we need a God to look at every situation. And this is why that book exists. That book is certified by the Lamb. Not because of any perspective that we can come up with as humans, but because of the perspective of God,
Right.
who looks at every situation of every moment of all of eternity and is just.
Well, I know that I've read in the Bible where it says that you'll be judged for every word that comes from your mouth. When you think about that, it's like, oh, okay.
That's rough.
Yeah.
No, no, because you're tired.
My stomach hurts. I ate too much.
I've learned too much from my brain hurt.
Yeah. So the book existing is the example of faith in action. God's kind of faith in action. There was no book, but then God believed there should be a book, and it existed. From the beginning it existed.
You doing okay, guys? This all for tonight?
Yeah.
Oh, 3 kids?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 4 kids. There's Zoe.
You're on the
They're
floor.
under the table.
Oh, get up.
Sit down.
Is Joseph a kid?
They charge as a kid for Joseph and Greg.
Sweet.
Because you
They don't realize how much he eats.
Yeah.
He's not eating very much.
I ate
He's eating
2 tacos and a bunch of quesadillas.
I told him up front, I said, they're teenagers, but they're working in children's church. And he said, okay, well, they're working in children's church. We'll charge for kids for them. Okay.
That's nice.
Hey, cheaper food.
I was like, by that standard, mine should be free,
Crazy
right?
town.
I didn't say that. But I'm working. Come on.
Yeah, you don't have to teach kids. You have to teach a bunch of adults.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then there's 10, but
Yeah.
you know.
Like overnight, right?
Well, it took a couple of days, but they're gone. That's the main thing.
No.
That's good.
14.
I was worried about that.
The
No. I'll be 15.
Once I figured out that they were just bullies, and every time I walked up to them, they
The faith of God.
wasn't worried about it.
I was going to go there, but people's brains are already there. Let's not dig deeper.
Hey, Mom. Mom. According to Sarah, I'm going to be 15.
So what do you guys think about Lucifer being locked away for 1,000 years? And then they release him.
Yeah, I
Here you
know.
go, bro.
I don't get
Congratulations, you
that.
did your time.
Yeah.
It's like
You
prison
paid your
sentence.
time for your rebellion. What are you going to do now? Rebel. Rebel again. And I'm special.
But if they're in a spiritual dimension, there's no time in that dimension either. So 1,000 years could be like one day.
I can see it's
No.
Day is like 1,000 years. 1,000 years is like a day.
The Bible references Lucifer being bound to the earth. The implication there is he experiences time like we do. He
Well, yeah, because
experiences
he's on the
world
earth.
like we do. He can only be in one place at a time. He feels every second of every day. That's part of his punishment. He and the unrepentant Satans.
Yeah.
The repentant Satans just got
Um,
chained in the
I got
abyss.
proud.
Lucifer did.
Aw.
Thanks for your
I didn't get
repentance.
a picture.
Oh, thank you.
Do we need any more sweets, you guys? Are we doing okay?
I'm cold again.
But I mean, at least they get to serve a purpose. Those angels, they get released
Did you want me to turn off the fast now?
during the tribulation to torture the earth.
Sure. Okay.
Hey, at least they're not
What is
in
it
a lake
doing?
of fire.
Right?
Cranking up the heat.
Yeah, but won't they go?
Oh.
Huh?
Wait, which ones?
There were 7 angels that led the rebellion in heaven. Lucifer was just one of them.
Yeah.
Where does it
Lucifer
say
was-
that?
It never gives the number in the Bible, but it does refer to them in the plural in the Old Testament, the Satans. It's not until the New Testament that it identifies the one Lucifer, the devil, as the enemy. In the book of Enoch, it mentions the number, and there's some Sumerian texts where it mentions the number. But the Bible does talk about the angels that are participated in the rebellion, that are locked in the abyss until the appointed time, that are then released in Revelations during the tribulation.
To come do whatever they want.
Basically,
are
yeah.
they considered like this? Is it the 7 trumpets of all the plagues that hit the earth?
No, they're a separate.
They're a separate
Aspect.
plague that hits the earth.
Yeah.
Okay.
They just torture people.
When you can't die.
Yeah, it's literally 1,000 years of torture. Why did you smile at that?
It's a lot of torture.
That is a lot of torture.
And then there's those one beasts that get released.
Yeah.
That look like horses and have faces like hair like women and scorpion tails that when they sting someone, the sting lasts for 6 months. But anyone with the mark of God on their forehead doesn't feel the pain of the sting.
Mark of God.
The opposite of the mark of the beast.
It's the Holy Spirit.
Yep.
There's multiple times in the New Testament it talks about the Holy Spirit being a mark on your
Oh
forehead.
yeah, the seal. You're sealed.
Yeah,
You're
with
seal.
sealed. It's a seal on your
Sealed with
forehead.
the
Is that
Holy
like
Spirit.
a little fire?
The
that
little
fucking-
the apostles apparently physically saw the seal on each other's foreheads on the day of Pentecost.
Yeah, that's what the fire was.
Anyone with that seal, anyone infilled with the Holy Spirit, doesn't feel the sting of those scorpion animals,
Beast.
Wait, why would
The
Holy Spirit still be on the earth?
because that happens before the rapture.
Oh, okay.
So as soon as we find those creatures walking around,
I imagine probably somebody's going to drill a little too deep at some point, and they're going to come out.
Release the Krakens.
Something that's already living on Earth, some creature that's already living in the bowels of the Earth, and somebody's going to accidentally release them because it's time. And
Well, yeah, it's like, well, God was like, He's seen that, like, we get too deep and that they're gonna do it. It's like, okay, well, that's when they come out, and
it's interesting when we talk about prophecy and time travel and backwards effective faith, because if you think about the book of Revelations, which
excuse me.
originally was just apocalypto, like, okay, this is just freaking me out. You know, when he went to title, he was like, hey, this is just freaking me out. This is the end of the world. It's the apocalypse. It wasn't that he was having a vision of the future. It was that he was being allowed to see the future.
The
because
future.
all of time is already rolled up like a scroll and exists. And we're just experiencing our part of the scroll as what we perceive as the present moves forward for us. But it's all just, from God's perspective, just rolled out in front of him. And all he did is this angel just picked up John and went, okay, I'm going to let you see the end of the scroll now. But the end of the scroll was already there. It's not like God is predestining that future to happen and saying, yes, I'm going to release those things on that date. Yes, I'm going to da-da-da. God was just going, this is what's going to happen. This is going to happen at that time. This is what my presence is going to be doing at that time. Not as I've decided to do that, but as it's just what
It's
is.
predestined.
It's what's going to happen.
That is kind of like predestined, like at some point.
But it's predestined because
You're looking at
we
it
made the
outside of time.
decisions that wrote the rest
Remember
of the
that
scroll.
machine?
Yeah.
And you could see
Adam and Eve made their
Yeah.
decisions that then wrote the next part of the scroll, wrote the next part of the scroll, wrote the next part of the scroll, but from God's perspective, it just went whoop, and all of time was right there.
he said,
Except my time is longer.
he said whatever he said first, and all of a sudden, whoop.
When his time was time.
And then he's like, okay, and I'll step in here, and then I'll come in here and work things out.
Well, it's an interesting thought. He said whatever he said, but the first words of God recorded are, for lack of better term, like thee. except he created the heavens and the earth before he said that.
Exactly.
So did he
For a
create those
moment,
with
I thought
words
that
as
was
well?
Sam.
Did he? And we just
Okay.
didn't record those
For a
words?
moment,
Did
I
he?
thought she was
What?
Sam.
Oh.
What is that
You
process?
walked in, you walked across there.
I would almost say it would have to be words because
Thank you, Zoe.
atoms are made up of
Particles.
particles.
Quarks.
Adam.
Anyway, when you
Quarks.
get the deepest we've gotten are quarks, and quarks are literally just concentrated sound waves. So all matter is literally just sound waves, concentrated in different variations, literally echoing creation through eternity. And that's
I know.
what literally
What a
everything is.
concept.
It's just the echo of God's voice from creation.
You know what's amazing? How like everything is made out of atoms and particles and stuff like that, right? And those are mostly empty space. But when you touch something,
Solid.
it's solid. And I was like, when I actually found out why that was, I was like,
Well,
whoa.
particles are more dense than the particles of your hand.
Well, actually, it's because it's repulsing. You're being repulsed so much so that you can't. It stops you.
This moment, I am being repulsed.
I know. I have that effect apparently.
That's funny. I don't know what this actually doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about, but
Yeah. I know.
there was a study done on light, and the idea was to find out if light was changed by human perspective. And so they made 2 rooms and they put cameras in the rooms, and they've got an emitter here, and they've got a wall, and they cut 2 slits in the wall. Theoretically, light, being rays, should go through those slits, and in the dark room that the slits open up to, there should just be 2 slits on the wall, right? So people stood in the rooms. One person stood in the emitter room. One person stood in the dark receiver room. Turned on the light. Everything worked exactly like it was supposed to. They left the room and redid the experiment. And what the cameras catch instead is that after those lights go through those slits, they became waves. And when someone would walk back into the room again, they would snap into place.
What?
But as long as the room was empty, the light waved
Wait.
when it went through the slits.
Wait.
Light physically altered its
Wavelength.
because it was being directly perceived by human eyes.
Wait, is there a video on this?
Probably not. It was a journal that they released. But
What?
they could see it on the camera. They were watching on the camera. You could see on the camera, it said in the study, when there was nobody in the room, it was going like this. And then when the person went in the room, they jumped back to how our understanding of light tells
wonder
us
if that
light
was-
should be working.
Due
That
to
was-
perception or due to, like,
Sense of light.
movement of atoms and molecules and things like that, you know what I'm saying?
So when there's no one in the room,
But light moves so fast, that camera, I mean, how fast is the shutter speed on that camera to be able to...
it was a video. They were taking video for their study. And you saw that the light going like this, and the people that were in the room could see the light doing it too. It's making waves on the wall. No, wait, people
In the room.
not in
No.
the room, because they're not in the room when it's waving.
Right.
But when they're in the room, it's straight. Anyway,
Hmm.
but on the camera, you see the difference. They said you could see the difference. When the person walks in the room, you see the light change. And when they leave the room, it goes back to waving again.
Hmm.
It's really interesting.
So what is light? We know light is made up of atoms.
So that
Atoms
means
are
we
ultimately
can
made up of
influence
sound.
light. Ooh.
We influence all of creation. including light. So then we have another question we have to ask. If the light from the sun is being shot out into space in all directions, what does that look like on the other side of the sun from where we are? Because we're not there to perceive it. Is he just waving out in space like this?
Well, yeah.
'Cause
You
we're not
know how like
perceiving
when we draw a sun, we draw little squiggly lines
it?
on it.
little squiggly lines.
That's exactly what it looks like, I guess.
How did we
Oh,
know?
You don't think what works? The sun?
Yeah.
What does the sun? How does the sun not work?
It doesn't work on the other side.
It just doesn't work on the. It's only shining in
Because
the
it's
sun.
flat, it only
dark
goes
side of the
forward,
sun.
right?
The other side doesn't actually exist.
Gotcha.
Maybe it's flat too.
Just like the moon, shiny through line. There's no other side of the moon.
Now there's certain insinuations of the flat Earth theory that doesn't make any kinds of sense, and that's one of them.
That what
the
is?
sun and they
The sun's
claim that
flat.
the sun and the moon are just half discs that only point at the Earth, and that the other side of them is always dark.
You know,
and then-
you,
all you gotta do is look at the sky for any number of time, any
what's stupid?
any amount, and you'll notice that's not possible.
We've literally confirmed that we've seen other planets that are round. They're round. The sun appears to be round.
They're round from our perspective.
And even some planets we have seen confirmed to be round, but Earth just happens to be flying through space like a frisbee.
Well, those people who have seen them, people who you can't trust.
Yeah, because you can't trust the people who've been in space.
They're liars.
Definitely.
So, every photo that you see of Earth from space is photoshopped. Do you want to know the number one reason why? Or the number one way you can tell?
Because of what?
Gravity thing.
Because of lack of satellites. If you took an actual physical photo of Earth, there are so many satellites and space junk around the Earth, you'd be able to see the space junk. And you never see that in any photo ever released of the Earth from space. Ever.
And why is that?
Because they're photoshopped.
Oh, huh.
They don't
So-
release photos of the Earth.
Or could it be
Weren't all
moving so
the,
fast? I mean, that stuff is like moving fast.
No, you'd be able to see it in the photo.
Huh.
It's the blur.
So what if?
Because the photo is still, so whatever's there at that moment, you'd see. Even if it's rotating.
So would is it like the Earth is photoshopped or the space junk is photoshopped out?
Well, to
No.
Photoshop something out, you have to Photoshop something in.
Okay, go sit down.
True.
The pictures of Earth that we have
Now.
are photoshopped, created piece by piece. They're not actual photos.
And also, majority of the time, they're piecemealed. Very few are one snap, there's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Most are piecemealed from, satellites.
So-
Several of them.
In your opinion, are the satellites moving at the same speed the space junk is moving? That's why they don't get destroyed? Because I don't see how the space station does not get hit every day with something.
So the way orbit works is you're literally falling towards Earth and just missing the gravitational pull enough that you go like this, and you're not actually making a circle on Earth. You're making kind of a stop sign type shape.
An
Because
octagon?
you're constantly falling, but just missing the pull of the atmosphere, and then you're getting pulled back in and falling again. And they're all doing it the same direction. All the space junk is falling the same direction.
At the same speed.
At the same speed in order to have a stable orbit. So once you have your spot in orbit, it's your spot because everything's moving at the same speed. Otherwise, they would either drift away or they would come crashing down.
Yeah.
There is one
So that's the only
specific
time.
speed that has
Right.
to be obtained to maintain orbit.
And because there's so little amount of stuff out there,
But enough
the
that you'd
speed-
be able to see it.
the speed degrades so slowly. Once it's up until it comes down. I mean, but they all come down.
eventually.
Yeah, because out there's no air resistance, and that is what.
Well, no is not 100% true.
Well, yeah, it's not 100% true, but it's
so little.
so little. There's like, it's basically.
Oh, what's happening?
Nothing.
We're talking about space stuff.
You're talking about space stuff.
My head is
Broken?
spicy now.
Has your head space stuffing?
Yeah.
While we've been sitting here, my headache went to my headache to a migraine. I'm not happy.
You know the SpaceX launch. What's his name? The Tesla guy.
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. They launched a car into space, right?
Yeah,
That had a
right.
camera on it,
Yeah.
and when they were trying to do the launch of it and the live video, they cut to the video of the car, and you could see the car in space, and then it glitches, and you see it's a car sitting in a round studio, and then it goes back to
The space.
car in space floating, and you're like, you guys didn't launch a car in space. That's disappointing.
I mean, why would they?
Because they have more money than sense.
No, Jeff.
Obviously they don't, because they didn't do it.
Every once in a while, when NASA's broadcasting the live spacewalks, it'll glitch, and you'll see the digital framework from the CGI computer.
No, that's not what it is.
Yeah, the universe glitches.
Well, we weren't looking at it properly.
Oh, I see.
I mean, if it's true that we're just a computer simulation, it's doable.
Yeah. But I mean, you've seen Hollywood movies, right? Like, what's the one with Sandra Bullock and George Clooney?
Yeah.
Interstellar?
Yeah. Just two people in the movie.
This looks real, right? Except the budget they spent to make this movie that looks real is a fraction of the budget that NASA has every year. So it's not like they don't have the resources to create convincing
Right.
stuff to give us. I'm not saying we don't go to space, but I'm not going to say that everything that we're given by these space agencies is real either. You look up International Space Station live fails,
That's it.
and you'll see things like they'll be talking about they're in space, and then they'll drop their microphone, and it just
Fall
drops
straight
to the
down.
floor, and they're like, oh, and bend down and pick it up. Like, I hit a pocket of gravity there, and you're like, what?
Right.
You hit a pocket of gravity in orbit around the Earth? And then they'll be doing things like, they'll be like, let's do backflips. And they'll go to do backflips, and there's the one guy that can't quite get it, and he grabs his harness strings and pulls himself up.
Oh.
And you're like, dude, you're supposed to be floating in space. You're not supposed to be wearing a harness?
Yeah.
So they don't float away, Bill.
Tethered.
Oh, I see.
God.
I think I'm breaking Sarah's heart.
Why?
Because
Baby,
of her
what's
face.
the matter?
Her tummy hurts.
I'm breaking her illusions about space.
No, it's your tummy.
Oh, okay. Now she's shy because I made everybody look at her. I'm sorry, Sarah. We're not looking at you now. Well, I am.
Well,
Connie!
I looked over there as well.
she's all sad because space is ruined for her.
On and off
Baby,
issues.
it's okay.
So enough about space. Does anybody have any other questions about
Look.
the topic that we covered about
50% off
Let's see.
tomorrow.
the
I have a question about whether my hair looks like that in space.
Whether your hair looks looks like outer space.
The forward-moving narrative that you never hear at funerals and in churches. How's that? You never hear this stuff at funerals, I think. Depends on the funeral.
I heard some weird stuff at funerals.
Have you? Stuff like,
We're sorry.
we're all going to join the Haley Bob Comet. Everyone drink your Kool-Aid.
What
And
about
you're like, yeah, I don't like Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Guys, why?
who
is
wants
it nap
to?
time?
Okay, well
Who
then
wants to
I'll just,
inherit? Who wants
just
to
put a bullet
inherit?
in your head.
Who wants to inherit this guy's drug cartel?
What?
What?
What about a drug cartel?
Who wants to inherit this guy's drug cartel?
You don't really inherit a drug cartel.
But you do declare a national emergency so you can build a wall. Thank you, Obama. Who gave the president authority to declare national emergencies in order to accomplish things that Trump then used to declare a national emergency so he can build the wall.
So do you call that the Obama legacy?
Yes. The wall between the United States and Mexico is the Obama legacy.
And then the next president will call an emergency for something
To
else.
tear down the wall.
Downward. Oh, they're all special.
I
in
mean,
their own ways.
technically, we're still in a state of war, so you don't have to call a state of national emergency. The president can just do whatever he wants, technically. Because we've been at war since Bush Sr. bombed Saddam Hussein.
Part of that was police action. Can't remember which. Part of it was war. Part of it was just.
Well, if you look at the national seal, he's got arrows in his hand instead of olive branch, meaning that we're definitely still at the state of war officially.
Ooh.
Oh, that's bright.
Thank you.
Why did I look backwards? This is my question.
Our church doesn't need awesome lighting. We've got awesome lighting.
Yeah,
Awesome.
My hand is-
lightning,
Get your
lightning.
hand out.
Also, they could go home now.
I hope they go home because that's really bright.
I'm just gonna stare at
Sounds
them.
it?
Hey, let's all just stare at them awkwardly.
All right. Migraine o'clock. If nobody else any,
Ooh, I've got one.
I have a
I am blue.
if nobody has anything else to say on this topic, I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the live feed.
Do it. Do it. Do
Bye.
Everybody, do your best God doing John Cena impersonation. Compassion is hidden from my eyes.
God see me.
Can't see me.
What are you doing?
You can wait until I don't have water in my mouth.